So for the next few days, I am unfortunately a Hunter main. We did damage tests of all of our Strand Supers, and I told you all that Titan would beat out Hunters. On paper, Titans actually do beat Hunter, but in reality, the Hunter Super is the best damage super in the game, so much so that it's literally bugging bosses, and the damage is not even quite registering correctly. We did a side-by-side comparison of what 600-something thousand damage looks like on Templar, and notice that this is 640-something thousand damage with Xenophage, but then we did the exact same amount of damage with our Silkstrike, and notice the difference here in health bar. What this means, guys, is after damage phases, that damage value is wrong. It's actually supposed to be close to double. Now, is this a bug? Very much so. But I am a man of my word, so therefore I will main Hunter until this bug is addressed. With that being said, let's talk about how to get the nastiest damage in the game. Put on STAR-JUJU scales, and that's it. That's the build. Have a good one, everybody. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. No, that's not the build. Although some of you are probably saying, Cross, that is the build. Why extend this video any longer than it has to be? Fellas, blame the YouTube algorithm. Simultaneously though, I do want to give you a build that's going to combine STAR-JUJU scales, weapons that you may have forgotten about like bad juju, and a bunch of other things to get your supers back as quickly as possible. Because the more Silkstrike supers you can pop, the faster you're literally going to one-phase everything in the game, at least before this gets fixed. Now we're going to talk about the mod system a little bit. Understand that Charge Red Light and Elemental mods have essentially been combined into a new system called Armor Charge. Now there were actually a lot of mods that were completely removed from the game, as well as a lot of mods that provide orb generation from pretty much anything that you do, which ties into armor charges. With all that being said, let's jump into the infinite super strand build. The strand super on Hunter is called Silkstrike. You weave this vicious rope dart to tear their targets, and it actually has two different attacks. The light attack, where you swing the rope dart in front of you to deal damage, and the tip of the dart deals bonus damage and causes targets to explode when killed. Then the secondary attack has you swing the rope dart in a circular motion around you in a very wide area. Now the heavy attack is really good. It's got a great range, lots of girth. You can also use your grapple with this super to close the gap with, and every time you touch the ground, you're able to grapple again. But the main thing I do want to focus on though is the light attack of Silkstrike. To fully get the most out of the damage here, you have to be almost out of range when doing your attack. Notice here on Templar, I'm hitting crits, but the moment I get too close, this damage drops down significantly. Now I know for the time being, the damage is bugged, so you can just literally just go in there and keep doing this light attack over and over, and you don't really have to finesse and keep that optimal range distance. But when this is fixed, there is going to be a certain level of skill required to get the most out of the Silkstrike line attack, which is primarily you having to keep distance from your enemy while doing the line attack. And the problem with this is every time you do a line attack, it pulls your character forward. Even if you're holding back on your joystick or the S key, your character is still getting pulled forward. Now there are two ways to actually pull your character back to get back within optimal range and hit the most damage with your super. Either A, you dodge backwards, but this consumes your super, although I love the animation, or B, you literally just take the time to walk back. Those are your two options. Again, nobody cares right now because the damage is bugged and everybody's like, yo, just sit there and mash your line attack over and over, which yes, you can do that for the time being. But eventually, this super will require you to be within optimal range. So in my opinion, I would advise getting used to judging the distance of your characters when getting the most out of your line attacks. Personally, 3 line attacks is what I can get off before I actually have to pull back. And that's the same thing with our other Strand Supers. Take Titans, for instance. You want to hit a heavy attack first. This debuffs the enemy, and then proceed to do 3 line attacks afterwards. That hits massive amounts of damage. And then follow up with another heavy attack. These Strand Supers, or at least the Titan Super and the Hunter Super, requires some skill. It's not just a button masher and you get the most damage. All right, I've preached enough. Now moving on to abilities. The only really required ability you need for this build is the Threadling Grenade. I know Threadlings are kind of a thing for Warlocks, but I want you to use it here for Hunters. By the way, if you need any help with farming Strand meditations, feel free to check out our guide. But yes, Threadling Grenades is what you're going to be using for this build. When thrown, these grenades actually break off into 3 Threadlings, which will hunt down targets and deal damage. You also get 2 grenade charges thanks to Widow Silk's Strand aspect. Now, Widow Silk and Ensnaring Slam are the only 2 available aspects at the time of this video, so those are really our only aspect options, so you might as well put them both on. Now for our fragments. You'll want Thread of Generation, which generates grenade energy just from dealing damage. Any kind of damage at all will generate grenade energy. We talked about this with our high uptime grapple build. This is low-key a meta fragment. Now there is a few bugs. We're going to talk about those in just a little bit, but for now, all that's important is that when you deal any kind of damage, you generate grenade energy. And it's not based on the amount of damage that you deal, but how many times you deal damage. For example, hitting over 100,000 damage with Izanagi on Coral only generates somewhere between 5 to 10% grenade energy, but you can get that same amount and more just from fast firing weapons like an SMG or even a trace rifle. Long story short here, guys, without diving into into bugs. Weapons that hit a lot, weapons that create the most damage numbers on the screen, that's what generates the most grenade energy. Now, the second fragment that you're going to want to use is Thread of Evolution, which makes our threadlings travel further and deal additional damage. Now, each threadling deals somewhere around 11,000 base damage, and this fragment actually cranks that up to 15,000 each. That's 15,000 damage per threadling, and there's 3 threadlings in each grenade. So you're looking at over 45,000 single target damage per grenade, or 15,000 damage individually to 3 separate targets. Again, this all depends on where your threadlings want to go. They kind of got a mind of their own. I will say this though, they do find a target. These things will climb walls, jump off buildings, go through water. They're putting in work, man. Now for our third fragment, we've got Thread of Warding. This gives us woven mail for 10 seconds every time we pick up an orb of power, which will be all the time now that orbs are literally everywhere now and the focus of all builds. Now, woven mail covers you in strand energy, greatly reducing incoming non-precision damage. This is mainly for survivability, but considering how many orbs we're going to be collecting, this is just free woven mail. Now, the last fragment we have is Thread of Binding. This makes each super final blow emits a suspending burst from the target. Now, this burst covers a large area and happens every single time you get a super kill. It's also really nice and is a great way to provide crowd control for your team, and it also gives you much more survivability while you're mid-super, as enemies that may have been aggroing or rushing you will get suspended into the air if they're within burst range. Now let's move to our exotic. Since this is a super build and everybody's also forgotten about it, we need to bring up Bad Juju. I know it's been years since we made a Bad Juju build, but Bad Juju comes with String of Curses, which states that kills refill the magazine and increases damage for a short duration. It also grants super energy based on the strength of String of Curses. Now, String of Curses can actually stack up to 5 times, providing more damage and more super energy with each stack. Now, as far as damage goes, each stack is an additional 20% damage. So at 5 stacks of String of Curses, Bad Juju is dealing double damage, which is 2,636 damage per crit versus Carl. And considering this is a 3-round burst weapon, that's 7,908 damage per burst. Now, you can maintain String of Curses for even longer if you have the Catalyst, which increases its duration. Now, the reason why we're bringing up Bad Juju, and I know a lot of you are like, oh my god, Cross, this is such a terrible weapon. Hold up. It is a kinetic weapon, and kinetics just got a buff. No, you're not about to go in there and slay the witness with Bad Juju, but when it comes to just messing up some ads, this pulse rifle is actually doing better than what it was doing before, as kinetic weapons got a buff. I will say the main reason why we're using Bad Juju is really because of its ability to generate super. Again, forget everything. Forget the weapons. The goal here is to get this broken super as often as we can. We want our super. And considering I'm gonna have to be a Hunter main for the next week, I want the super as often as possible. Now we're gonna talk about pairing it with gear. The bread and butter to this build is Star Eater Scales. This exotic, which synergizes pretty much with every Hunter subclass, but when combined with Silkstrike, this is what's really cranking that damage up to insane levels. Its exotic perk is Feast of Light, which states that you gain additional super energy from orbs of power that you pick up. And while your super energy is full, picking up an orb of power overcharges your super, causing you to gain a burst of healing when cast and a bonus to your super damage. Now, at maximum overcharge, you also gain an overshield. Now, in order to actually get the max stacks of Feast of Light, which is ×4, all you need to do is pick up 4 orbs while you have your super. Casting your super while you have Feast of Light ×4 will give you a burst of healing, an overshield, and 70% increase in super damage. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that there's literally so many ways to generate orbs. 4 orbs is nothing here. Like, even if you're playing solo, that's nothing. Now, I do want to talk about our artifact perks, because you're going to need some of them for this build. You definitely want authorized mods for grenades. This will significantly reduce energy costs of all grenade-related armor mods, as well as prismatic transfer. Now, prismatic is not required, but it's a great teammate buff because of the amount of supers you're going to have. It states that when you cast your super, each member of your fire team, which has a subclass damage type different than yours, gains a bonus to weapon damage. Now, last but not least, let's talk about mods. Armor Affinity is no more, which has really simplified our builds. In our helmets, we've got Kinetic Siphon, which will make Bad Juju generate an orb of power on rapid kills. We also have Ashes to Asset mods, which will give us bonus super energy on grenade kills. In our gloves, we have Firepower, which makes our grenade final blows create orbs of power, as well as 2 grenade kickstart mods, which will give us grenade energy back when our grenade energy is fully expended. So when you throw a grenade, you instantly get some grenade energy back. Additionally, any armor charge stacks that you have will be consumed, generating additional grenade energy for each stack. Now, unfortunately, these versions of these mods are really not as potent as our Charge with Light versions. We are not getting back as much energy as we used to in the previous system. Bungie is definitely trying to tap down our ability usage across the board, and this is just one of their ways. On top of the already reduction we got in ability regeneration, it's a bummer, guys, but that is the reality right now. In our chest piece, though, we have 2 charged up mods. This brings us the max amount of armor charge that we can have, which is up to 5. Now, if you have the room and you want a third one here, you can add up to 6. Completely up to you. I think think 5 is plenty. Now for our boots, we have kinetic weapon surge mods. These actually give our kinetic weapons a small bonus to damage while we have armor charge, but it will also make our armor charge decay over time. Now don't worry about it. You're going to be getting so many orbs anyways. You'll be topping this back off again. Now 2 of these mods give a 17% buff. 3 of them goes up to 22%. Personally, I think 2 is just fine. That seems to be a good sweet spot. Now this does stack with Bad Juju String of Curses, and at times 5, you'll be dealing somewhere around 3,084 damage per crit for a total of 9,252 damage per burst here on Carl. We also have stacks on stacks, giving us an additional armor charge per orb. So instead of just getting 1 armor charge when we pick up an orb, we're actually getting 2. Now in our class item, we have double time dilation mods. Now I know guys, you can actually stack these together. This gives our decaying armor chargers a longer duration. And as far as your stats go, I do say you want to prioritize resilience just for the extra damage resist. Granted, that did get a nerf. It doesn't offer 40%. It's now 30%. Also, speccing into discipline for this build is also a very good choice. Even though there's a lot of things generating grenade energy here, bringing that 232 cooldown to as low as possible is very helpful. Now, you don't need to spec in an intellect. Trust me, you won't even need it. So here is the gameplay loop. You want to start out snagging kills with Bad Juju. Every 2 rapid kills will generate an orb of power, and every single kill will add a stack of String of Curses, as well as give you super energy. Pick up the orbs that you generate until you have your full maximum amount of armor charges, at which point you can then throw both of your Threadling grenades. Now, Grenade Kickstart will proc and will take your armor charges, giving you some grenade energy, and then you'll get another chunk of energy when you actually throw your second grenade, because Grenade Kickstart will proc again. Your Threadling grenades will then split into 3 Threadlings and will kill multiple enemies, and the more enemies you kill with your grenades, the more super energy you're getting from assets to assets. So if all 3 of your Threadlings track the same target, you really won't get as much super energy, so you kind of want them to split off to multiple targets. Now the best way to actually throw these grenades is up high. That way when they split, they distance themselves as they fall, growing further apart from each other. That way when they land, they each go to a different target. Now each Threadling will track from a further distance and deal bonus damage thanks to Thread of Evolution. And when they deal damage, you'll generate a small amount of grenade energy thanks to Thread of Generation. Every kill you get with your Threadling will also generate an orb of power because of our firepower mod. And picking up these orbs do a lot of different things. They'll give you super energy, even more super energy than normally because of Star Eater scales, and it increases the amount of super you get per orb. Each orb will give you Woven Mail thanks to Thread of Warning, and they'll also give you armor charge stacks back. So everything is good to go for when you have another Threadling grenade ready. Now until then, those armor charges will be buffing your Bad Juju because of the double kinetic weapon surge mods. And the time it takes for each stack to decay is longer because of your double time dilation mods. Bad Juju will also be generating a small amount of grenade energy, once again because of Thread of Generation, and the entire loop here is to just score kills with Bad Juju, get the orbs, throw your grenades. When you have full armor charge, pick up the orbs, get more kills with Bad Juju, rinse and repeat. Now with this build method, you can cut that 9-minute and 16-second super cooldown down to around a minute or less. And once you get your super, you can then pick up 4 more orbs, get feast times 4, and then proceed to pop your Silkstrike Super. You get a health bump, an overshield, and 70% more super damage. And by the way, that burst of suspending energy per kill, thanks to Thread of Binding, is benefiting from that 70% increase in damage. This build is the best way to take advantage of this busted super as of now. So for my Hunter mates, have fun. A dim link is down below if you want to just slot this build. And again, with all these dim link guys, you can literally just load it up, equip the build, and then you can save that exact same build in game, which is honestly what I've been doing here lately. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.